Okay, so I said that super easy in theory. It's going to help, I think, if we look at some examples. Start with it. Start with an easier one, right? Um, these theories about writing and language should apply. We're talking about them generally at this point. They should apply to all writing, language, and text. So a stop sign should count, right? Um, how does it? How does this text? And this isn't even specialized discourse, really. How does this text do something? How does this piece of writing help us accomplish something? Right? Goes without saying. It helps us not run over kids at a crosswalk. How does it make meaning? Well, that example that I gave earlier, um, it helps here, right? If we are literate, if we have alphabetic literacy in English, we take those alphabetic letters STOP. Somebody has put them there to mean something. We as a reader interpret them to mean something, and lo and behold, the goal is achieved. We stop at a stop sign. Um, but does a stop sign only work through alphabetic literacy? I guess we could also say drivers in the United States have a traffic literacy, and even if you didn't see those letters, you would see an octagonal, right? Yeah, eight sides. You would see that octagonal red sign, and right, even that would help you make meaning. Um, how does it mediate the activities of users? How does it shape the experience of? Helps achieve the goals of? Um, this piece of writing, this text, this piece of communication um, shapes the activities of the users. Drivers stop. It is through this text that drivers stop. It is through this text that pedestrians know that this is probably a safe place to cross. Now, in a discourse, which we know is a shared group of text, writing and language, or literacy perhaps, used by certain communities, we know that that discourses of specific communities have certain values, beliefs, and ways of thinking. I don't think this counts. I don't think a stop sign really counts. There's not really a super specialized group that uses stop signs, but we can run with this example a little bit. For instance, if you are a driver from China, I have no idea what you might not have that English literacy, and you might not recognize the octagonal red means stop, right? So in some ways, I guess there is a specific group of users who use this. It's just a very large one. Um, but right, if we were to consider this as a discourse, what values, beliefs, or ways of thinking might it carry? Or another way to think about it is, to become traffic literate in the United States, that would lead to some sort of enculturation. So the question would be, what attitudes or values or norms or beliefs or ways of thinking, what sort of cultural ideas would we be adopting if we become literate in traffic literacy in the United States? I'm leaving a pause here intentionally so you can maybe take some guesses, but theoretically, according to writing studies scholars, it should work this way. I suppose, um, if you see and respect and stop at a stop sign, then the sort of values or attitudes or ways of thinking or beliefs that are implied are, one, you think, maybe you trust in the authority of the federal government that puts that there, and that puts that stop sign there, and that will punish you if you don't do what it says. Maybe some of the values or attitudes implied are that you think pedestrians have the right of way over motorists, and you don't, maybe it means you have a lot of respect for those on foot, more so than traffic literate people in other driving communities. Okay, we're really stretching it here, but you can see if you stop at a stop sign, that's one of the ways we can understand that text is sort of imposing and you sort of become enculturated to the values and the reasons and the purposes of that text. What about our syllabus? A bit more of a complicated text than a stop sign. How does it do something? What does it do? How does it help us do something? Has lots of purposes, but we might say it it outlines what we might just focus on the learning outcomes portion. It tells students what they can expect to learn in this class. How does it make meaning? Well, you might read the first learning outcome, which is to apply concepts from writing and rhetoric to identify and analyze complex, real-world rhetorical situations. Now, this is another good example of what it means to make meaning. If you read that in week 0, it probably didn't mean that much to you. Now that you're reading it in week 5, maybe you're starting to see what some of those concepts are. At the end of this term, I imagine you'll have even more ideas of the sort of concepts from writing and rhetoric that we're using to identify real-world writing rhetorical situations. So, right, the message hasn't changed, but because you as a reader are doing active work co-creating meaning, the meaning does change as your understanding changes. How does it mediate or shape or help us achieve our goals? Well, you read the learning outcomes and you say, okay, I sort of have some sort of idea about what's going to happen in this class, or you turn something in 2 weeks late, and I say, sorry, I don't refer to the syllabus, I don't accept work 2 weeks late. Something like that, right? It is a text that helps us achieve our goals. Let's say the goal is for you to understand what the course is going to be about, or let's say the goal, multiple goals. There are multiple goals here. One of the goals of the syllabus is for you to understand. It's sort of like a contract. It's sort of for you to understand what the expectations are and what happens when you meet them and what happens when you don't, right? So that text really helps us navigate, mediate those activities and achieve those goals. This last question, really about enculturation, is really kind of the most interesting, I think. But so this is a piece of discourse in our, right? This is part of, we might say it's lowercase d discourse. This is part of educational discourse, perhaps. We might say it's part of our specific discourse community of Writing 121, or excuse me, Writing 122 students and teachers. In any case, right, it should have some sort of values or beliefs or ways of thinking, ways of knowing that are an undercurrent throughout it. So you, as a student, may or may not have become literate in the, you may or may not have become syllabus literate. Maybe you are, and educational student literacy is a thing that you may have learned, you may have been taught how to learn, right? We can see this is a literacy. There are multiple literacies we navigate all the time. Let's not think about this syllabus, but let's think about maybe the syllabus more generally. As you've become a savvy, literate navigator of syllabi, or syllabuses, both are accepted, what sort of attitudes or values or norms that they carry have you sort of have you sort of imbibed? Have you sort of taken in? I actually wish this was a face-to-face Zoom or a class so that I could hear your answers, but I'm happy to hear more. I'd love it if you reached out to me or in a discussion board, let me know what values or attitudes or norms or beliefs you think syllabuses carry. Let's say that your teacher says, we know this isn't so for our class, but let's say that your syllabus says in another class, all work must be turned in an MLA format, and standard academic English is required. If you read that in every syllabus in every class you go to, and then you do it, you don't say y'all, or you don't use your home dialect, and you say you all in your writing. If you use that standard academic dialect, you are maybe participating, maybe you're accepting implicitly the idea that that dialect, standard written English, is better or smarter than other non-standard dialects. We know that that's not actually necessarily true, but right, if that's sort of an undercurrent of all kinds of academic texts, that you may be actively being enculturated into that way of thinking as we speak. Excuse me. So these are the goals. These are our threshold concepts. This is what we need to understand moving forward this term. And just to look forward a little bit, these are the questions, these are the ideas that are going to help us in our discourse community report. We are going to take these ideas, whether it's G's idea about discourse with a capital D that you'll learn about this week very soon, whether it's the idea, we'll learn genre theory, we'll learn some ideas about how genre works, we'll learn some Lexis theory, we'll learn some ideas about how Lexis works, whether it's this idea of multiple literacies and what it takes to become literate, or whether it's this idea of enculturation. We're going to take these foundational ideas from writing studies, and we're going to apply them to real world rhetorical situations. In short, this is how language and texts should work according to writing scholars. And in the discourse community report, we're going to take these theories or ideas and say, okay, this is the sort of unique, specific way that my discourse community uses Lexis or genre, or this is the unique sort of discourse with a capital D that you need to inhabit to become a member of this discourse community. We're going to take these ideas, any one of these ideas, and analyze our real world rhetorical situations, those discourse communities that we've already identified and of which we are part, or hopefully becoming, or we hope to become a part of. Great. Of course, this stuff is heady. I know it. Our readings are going to get a little bit more difficult this week, but as always, feel free to ask me questions. And this isn't rocket science, honestly. Writing studies has this tendency, like any discipline, to sort of dress things up and use really fancy language. But as I hope this video has shown, these are tangible. These are concepts that we can understand and even have fun with. It's kind of fun to take these ideas and see how they work in real world specific situations. So we'll review G next week. Next week we'll come back to these key points, and we'll kind of ask the same questions, but with more of a focus on genre and Lexis. We'll talk about those ideas in a bit more detail. But hopefully working with G and Johns this week will give you some more examples we can look at to understand what these look like in the real world. And as always, feel free to ask questions in the Ask Questions Here discussion board if you experience any.